9:25 exactly, news and views on Salam Media. It is Heritage Day. We here in South Africa are enjoying a public holiday, and different people, different communities are doing different things to probably celebrate who we are as South Africans. Let's cross over to the UK and talk to an expat South African. And that, of course, is Haley Reichert. She's based in London, and she's going to tell us what the expats are doing in not only the UK, but I should imagine similar things all around the world. Hi there, Haley. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Okay, clearly you're not enjoying a public holiday there in the UK. It's a holiday unique to us here in South Africa. And of course, I understand that there's a huge expat community, not only in the UK, but all around the world. How long have you been in the UK, and what exactly is it that you're doing there?
So I've been here for 15 years, which has
Oh,
flown by.
wow.
But I never in a million years would have thought that I would have ended up being this proudly passionate South African. I think I used to kind of, in my early 20s, had a view similar to quite a few people probably, that South Africa is heading in one direction. But it was through moving over here and connecting with my fellow South Africans over here and getting involved in charity and community and political initiatives, that's kind of driven me and my sort of who I am and what I hope my legacy will be. So I've, for the past decade, have been very involved with the global South African community and helped tens of thousands of South Africans around the world. And yeah, there's no one knows for sure how many South Africans are abroad or here in the UK. I personally think that there may be as many as 1 million. Some people might argue that, but my day job is I'm a mortgage and protection advisor, but my heart is fully invested in South Africa and trying to drive change in SA. So I network. Earlier this year, I joined a group called Women of Valor. We've registered. We're awaiting our charity status here in the UK. And between us and there's a South African Men's Guild and various other sort of community leaders, if you will, who kind of organize events and support our fellow South Africans, both here in the UK and as wherever possible back home as well.
So there's a lot of, I spoke earlier on to a social activist here in South Africa and asked him, what is there to celebrate Heritage Day? I kind of get the sense that, and shoot me down if you find me to be way too cynical, but, living in the country and seeing what's playing out, like you, I'm proudly South African. I'm passionate about our country, and I'm hoping against all odds that we can get over all the dark stuff in the country, the corruption and everything else. And we have to be hopeful. We certainly have to be hopeful. This is a beautiful country with beautiful people. And I guess if we all band together, we can be the creators of change. But it's easier for you being on the other side of the world, seeing things differently. You're also exposed to UK politics and all of their challenges playing out on a daily basis. Does that make you see South Africa pretty differently to perhaps being in the country itself and seeing what's playing out?
I think so, and it's quite tricky because it's looking at South Africa on the global scale and looking at what else is going on around the world, as you've said. And I think a lot of South Africans, especially those who don't have a ticket out the country, who don't have access to, an easy access to a foreign passport or being able to get a visa to move abroad, who don't have anywhere else to go. I think it's very much a case of put your head down and just survive. So I was at home at the end of July, early August. I did a 3-week solo trip, met with different opposition political party leaders. I went into a couple of townships in Durban. And for me, it's a case of trying to bridge the gap. As I said, there's a lot of South Africans living abroad, and even some of those who've maybe had bad experiences in South Africa, and that's why they've left. Every single one, there's only in the last 10 years, I've engaged with tens of thousands of South Africans, and I've only ever had to block one person who was very anti the country. Every single person even though that hope, often we feel like that hope is dwindling, even if someone's got just the tiniest little glimmer, they still have that deep longing and that deep sense of wanting South Africa to change, wanting to overcome all the challenges. There are so many South Africans who, if they see South Africa turn a corner, they want to move home. If you go look on Facebook, there's return. There's a couple of return to South Africa groups. There are people who I've got friends who are moving back this year. So a lot of
Wow.
people love the country. A lot of people want to see the change in the country. And I think for me, being in the position I am and having the experience over the last 10 years, it's trying to get South Africans, particularly South Africans abroad, and those back home. And I talk to people across different townships, across the country. And the number one thing that's been coming out from my conversations with them is we're full of the current leadership and the current government, but we don't know who else to vote for. And obviously we have elections next year. So it's trying, for me, doing that trip, coming home, meeting opposition parties, also liaising with various civil society organizations to try and create awareness. I'm actually going to be launching a project in the next couple of weeks, and because my target audience is mainly the expats and people particularly in Durban area, I mean, it's not specific to any kind of target audience. It's like a general South African project, but it's just to try and bridge the gap and to try and see people, to see politicians differently. I think because of all the negativity that we just bombarded with in the South African media all day long, I think people tend to just kind of go, ugh, it's just another politician. I think I'm in the fortunate position where I happen to know a lot of the different opposition party leaders and ward councillors, and I know how much work goes into it and how much heart and effort goes into the jobs that they do. No political party is perfect, but going to meet them, going into the townships, spending time I was in Mulwani, Kaitamana, Umlazi, just, really kind of getting that feel and seeing for myself what the real state of the nation is. We hear the surface level stuff, we hear the corruption and the load shedding, but really seeing it on the ground, like how does that filter down to the sort of, and I don't want to sound condescending, but to the lowest level of society. And for me, trying to share that message with South Africans abroad, because our £5, £5.10, €5 or dollars can go a really long way. And I know expats are also gearing up to be voting next year. So we're going to be really trying to drive them, because we know that more than 90% of expats do vote opposition. We just need to massively increase the numbers. It's extremely difficult for them because they have to travel across country or multiple countries to get to their nearest foreign mission to be able to vote. A lot of them will say, well, my one vote versus 1,000 votes back home for the ruling party, what is my one vote actually going to mean? So trying to get them to understand that I know finances are tight and we have a cost of living crisis, but if they can sacrifice a few pounds every month to help the parties, the civil society organizations who are on the ground, who are reaching out to the traditional ANC voters, or the apathetic non-voters, particularly in the youth sector, their contribution over the coming months until elections will actually go a really long way to driving the change. And for me, it's okay. I work with 3 words: educate, empower, and inspire. You can't empower someone until you've educated them, and you can't inspire them until you've empowered them. So for me, it's a case of educating people. And I tell people about all the various things I've done, whether it's COVID repatriation and expatriation, getting South Africans out of Ukraine, helping a family in Mulwani. I'm helping a student get through matric this year. So many various different things. And I joke, I say I collect ANC officials' numbers and I fight with them. I've been helping the Mpumalanga students who are in Russia, where the government wasn't paying their stipends and their tuition. Off the back of that was the graduates who had a protest in Pretoria a couple of weeks ago. They've come back off the Russia program and are stuck at home. Those are the medical students. And you don't have to literally fight ANC officials like I do, but there's so many things that South Africans, whether they're home or abroad, if they have money and they can contribute, great. But there's also so many other ways. And for me, the number one thing is just talking. When I was at home, I was buying groceries for the family I'm supporting, and the cashier said, oh, things are so expensive. So I said, well, these aren't actually for me. And the lady that was packing the bags asked me for my number. So, I chat to her. I did another radio interview a couple of weeks ago, and I gave my number out, and I had 2 people message me off the back of that. And for me, it's not it's not shoving down someone's throat who you should vote for. It's just educating them, empowering them, making them understand that their vote really does count. And when you talk about, if you look at Helen Zille, how she became the mayor of Cape Town, I think it was 2 or 3 votes. If you look at Chris Pappas, who's mayor of Umgeni, who's doing a phenomenal job, I think it was 40 something votes that he got over the line by. So there's a lot of, and one thing that I want to do with the expats is start doing like Zoom calls where we bring on different party leaders, and kind of make it more personal, and for them to be able to see it's not just some high level politician who's in it for the money. It's people do care. South Africans, I think there's just so much negativity and we're sort of bombarded down all the time, but there are such incredible South Africans who are really pushing beyond measure to try and drive the country forward.
Okay, so the all important question is, I can hear that you are passionately South African. You want things to work out in our country. And it's so refreshing talking with someone like you, because guess what, Haley? It gives me hope. So really, good on you for that. So the all important question is that, why did you leave the country 15 years ago? Why are you doing what you're doing? And what is the difference you saw on your last trip to South Africa? So 3 very important questions for you to respond to.
Okay, so I left, so I was 22, I was engaged. The plan was to come over and do the usual stint that everyone kind of did sort of 15, 20 years ago, work, travel, and then go home and set up family. I fell pregnant whilst I was planning my wedding. I've kind of done everything a bit backwards in my life. So my ex-husband's family lived here, his parents lived here, so we had a bit of a soft landing. So we made the decision, I was going to finish my degree in South Africa first and come over, but I ended up finishing it whilst over here. So it wasn't that we hated the country and we were wanting to get out. It was just, I do have a British passport and he could get a spousal visa, and it was more just work, travel, explore the world before we move home and settle. But that didn't happen. We ended up settling here instead. And then, so that's why I moved over. Why I do what I do. So I was here for a couple of years. I'd finished my degree. Having a baby in the UK, childcare is extremely expensive. I didn't have any UK work experience, so I found trying to get a job was a real challenge. And I would have literally had to have paid my entire salary to childcare. So a couple of years in, I was kind of questioning, what's my purpose in life? Why am I here? And I thought, let me go on Facebook, go and find some South Africans. There's got to be some South Africans in London. And I came across this little group called the DA Abroad, and this other chap, Marky Warren, used to run a blog, very well-known blog here called Farside. And they were organizing a protest. It was the No to Secrecy bill. So I thought, fantastic, let me go make some friends. And I painted my daughter's face with the South African flag. I mean, she was only, I think she was probably about 3 years old then. And off we went to Trafalgar Square. And that was my kind of light bulb moment. And it was from that point, and it was I think it was the 3rd of December, 2011. And I just kind of changed my outlook, and it was from that moment on I got involved with the DA Abroad. I was involved with them for about 7 or 8 years, and I got involved with the UK based Nedbank South African Charity Golf Day, which has been going for about 20 years. I was part of their team for six years. They have an annual golf day and raise quite a lot of money for South African charities. And I've done lots of various bits and bobs. South African Chamber of Commerce, I was on the Exco for 2 years. Why I do what I do, deep down, I actually don't know. I just have this intense passion and desire to make a difference to the country that built me and made me who I am. And it was only really in moving over here that I realized just how passionate I am about South Africa and just how truly South African I am. But I think as the years have gone by, for me, it's a case of that pull becomes stronger and stronger to move home. But for me, I won't, a lot of South Africans go, oh, if South Africa turns a corner, then maybe I'll consider moving back. But they're just kind of sitting in their own little bubble and not actually doing anything to drive that change. So for me, it's a case of, I want to be doing something every single day. I talk to people every single day. And it can just be a few minute conversation or a little message on WhatsApp or just something small. But I want to be investing in the future of South Africa every single day, so that my long-term goal is to move home. So my little one's 7. my personal circumstances with my ex, so I can't just hop on a plane and bring my kids back. But my long-term goal is when my youngest is 18 years old, which is 11 years from now, which will kind of be the next 3 elections, I want to make sure ultimately that there is a home to come home to. And when I move home, I would really like to get involved in politics in South Africa on a full-time basis. And then I've actually forgotten what your third question was.
How do you see your recent trip to South Africa?
Ah,
Um, is it as gloomy perhaps as the media makes it out to be, and as gloomy as perhaps the opposition parties are making it out to be? I'm kind of thinking you coming from the outside with literally new eyes, and you can see things pretty objectively. What was your sense of where the country's at?
um, I might get into trouble by some people who tend to kind of fall on the more positive side of South Africa. Um, there's a lot going on in SA. There is money in SA. Obviously, it's in fewer hands rather than being more sort of equally shared. Um, and it's a tough one because people are still surviving, people are still running businesses, but I think we have to look at not just like the here and now and everything seems rosy. And, I don't come home to be like a tourist and only go to the good spots. Driving, I caught the Gautrain for the first time, and you look out the window and, the extreme poverty that you see. And then, you're going from Sandton to the airport, and Sandton's all plush and lovely, but you have to travel through poverty, and through shacks and things to be able to get from Sandton across to the airport. And again, it was important for me to go into those townships and to see. So the family that I'm supporting, they took me around their sort of area, and you've got 6-7 people living in a tiny little shack. A lot of it is single moms with multiple children, and just kind of meeting some of them and engaging with some of them, and kind of, for me, it's a case of I can only be as proudly South African as the weakest link. So yes, we say we're proudly South African and we support the Springboks, and we listen to Amapiano and all that kind of stuff. But I can't be a true proud South African when millions of people are living in poverty. So for me, it's not just about coming home and seeing family and doing touristy things. It's about where is South Africa heading? And we know how much debt the country is sitting in. We know the levels. I mean, every day there's more stories of corruption coming out. So I think it's not great by any means. And I think people need to understand that the longer we act like ostriches and kind of head in the sand and just live in our little bubble and just trying to survive one day to the next, the whole country is going to hit breaking point. And it's the same with Zimbabwe. Like, why? Solly Maweng posted an article this morning, and he was talking about, with Zimbabwe, like, why weren't Zimbabweans getting angry enough? And I get frustrated with South Africans as well, because why aren't we angry enough? Why aren't we responding? And we get angry with our little comments on social media, on when somebody, a new media channel posts another story of corruption. But why aren't we actually getting off our backsides and standing up and doing something to drive the change? Why aren't we demanding more from, we're not going to, the ANC cannot save itself at the end of the day. And there are good people within the ANC, but the ANC at large cannot save itself. The corruption is too deeply embedded in all areas of society and sort of public structures. So for
Okay,
me,
we're going to have to wrap up. My next guest is standing by. So, very quickly, should we be celebrating Heritage Day? What should it mean to us? And for you as an expat, and of course, expats all around the world.
I think we absolutely need to remind ourselves of, you don't know where you're going until you know where you've come from. And even though I might be a white South African, I grew up in KZN. So for me, we had a Heritage Day event here in London on the weekend.
Oh, wow.
And I had my Zulu beads, my Zulu skirt. And, we had so many different people dressed up in different sort of South African tribal costumes. And it is important to remind ourselves we are better than the current situation. And, it's about embracing our difference, unity and diversity. We need to remind ourselves that we have this amazing thing called Ubuntu, which we're known the world over for. So celebrating our diversity, celebrating our South Africanness is incredibly important. And I think it helps us kind of reinvigorate that hope. But for me, it's a case of we have to turn that hope into belief. And in doing that, we have to act on it. We have to, we all have to be doing something every day, every week, every month to drive South Africa towards what the country that we want it to be and that we know that it can be.
Haley Reichert, lovely talking with you. Gosh, you do give hope undoubtedly, and just keep strong, keep your message, filtering through to all of the expats, not only in the UK, but all around the world, and enjoy Heritage Day. Well, you celebrated on the weekend, but I do look forward to having lots more chats with you in the future. Stay safe. God bless. Thank you. Okay, we're moving along. It is 9:46. News and views on Salam Media. Standing by to talk with us next is my colleague Inayat Wadi, and he is going to talk to us about what is UCSA's media subcommittee all about. He's just been appointed, so let's understand it.